Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise today to deliver my response to the 2019-2020 national budget. But first, Mr. Speaker, I would like to open by again expressing my congratulations to our HSBC World Rugby 7 Series champions. Through a combination of talent, grit, perhaps a little bit of prayer, once again put Fiji on top of the world. As we open this week of debate, Honourable Speaker, some will emphasize the supposed differences between each side of Parliament. Meanwhile, when we think back to cheering for our boys as they played in Paris, glued to our television sets throughout the nation, surrounded by family, by friends and neighbors, that sense of unity, that communal pride and passion is what should inspire us when we look at the Fijian economy. Because just like when we watch rugby, we ultimately all share in the outcome. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the health of Fiji's economy, our political allegiances shouldn't matter. I'm not saying that we here in Parliament should all agree on all things. That would be unrealistic. Healthy debate is what drives a healthy democracy. Disagreeing with certain expenditures, policies, or even philosophical approaches is all part of politics. But there is a fundamental difference between healthy debate on one hand and actively working to undermine our national economy on the other. The latter, Mr. Speaker, crossing the line from healthy debate to attempted destruction is precisely what is being done by the members of the opposition. It started earlier this year with Honourable Linda Tambuya's false claims that our banks had insufficient liquidity. All you have to do is ask experts, and they will tell you that these claims have no merit. Honourable Tambuya is not a banker, and is certainly no expert on the matter. But what she lacks in economic experience, Honourable Speaker, she makes up for inability to spread gossip and rumours. In a country of Fiji's size, Honourable Speaker, lies can spread quickly. And the more time the lie is told, the more people start to believe it. It's a phenomenon that I'm sure all Fijians watching at home can relate to. But when that rumor mill is elevated to the national stage, it can have very real consequences. If someone hears that there's an economic crisis, people can stop spending. Investors may rethink opening a new business. When manufactured fear impacts economic activity, it goes beyond a political disagreement. It is, as our Honourable Minister of Economy put it in the budget announcement, economic sabotage of the highest order. To everyone across the country tuning in on their television or smartphones, I want to put an end to these rumors right now. The Fijian economy is strong and our liquidity levels are more than sufficient. It is a good time to invest. It is a good time to do business in Fiji and seek employment. Those aren't social media rumors, Honourable Speaker. Those are facts. Mr. Speaker, what the opposition needs to understand is there comes a heightened level of responsibility that comes with being a member of Parliament. You aren't running for office anymore. In this job, you have a duty to protect the Fijian people, the Fijian economy, and the Fijian nation as a whole. I only wish, Mr. Speaker, that when the banks around the country came out and said that Honourable Tambuya's claims were blatantly false, and that liquidity levels are indeed healthy, this should be the end of the opposition's attempted economic subversion. Unfortunately, the day before the 2019-2020 national budget was announced, as you've heard, Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Sithiweni Rambuka, chose to one-up his protege by declaring to the cameras that the Fijian economy was on the brink of an economic collapse, without any idea of what was in our budget. To top it all off, when asked whether he had an economic plan of his own to present as an alternative, he said that he had none. This, Mr. Speaker, coming from Mr. Collapse himself, the very man at the helm when the National Bank of Fiji collapsed, halving the value of the Fijian dollar and putting the country into a path of debt that my government, as you've heard from the Minister of Economy, is working to pay off to this day. During last year's election, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition campaigned on the fact that he was a changed man, excuse me, pleading for forgiveness and promising that the irresponsible behavior of his past was behind him. But during that press conference, when he spoke of a collapse, before he even saw the contents of this national budget, was proof that his old reckless habits persist to this day. It has not changed. I thank Mrs. Rambuka for being present today. As he has mentioned, he has brought Mrs. Rambuka's name into this talk of the boom. I want to apologize to Mrs. Rambuka that her name has been brought in relation to the boom. The boom has nothing to do with what we have talked about in relation to what the economy is doing. It is to do with the washing of the clothes. But I'm very concerned that the Honorable Voreqe Bainimarama has no boom packet in front of her. Don't put it under the table, keep it on top. But the boom really, Honorable Speaker, is to clean up the mess that he left with us. Order. Mr. Speaker, the success of my government speaks for itself. There is no collapse. The Fijian government, speaks for itself. The Fijian economy is entering into a record state year of growth. This decade-long streak is unprecedented in our history. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Speaker, spoke of the decline in the gold production. He hasn't told us really the story of the gold, the decline in the gold production because it's an old mine and it's owned by private companies, nothing to do with government. But what is forgotten to tell everyone is that it's responsible for 3 devaluations, twice in 1987 and again in 1998. I apologize. 50%. By devaluing the Fijian dollar by over 50%. Our foreign reserve is much more than when Rambuka was PM. He's responsible for 3 devaluations, as I said, twice in 1987 and again in 1998. He single-handedly is responsible for increasing cost of living for Fijians by devaluing the Fijian dollar by over 50%.
Oh, very poor.
He talked about the old Chinese saying. I thought he was going to come up with a Chinese song, the Qing Taowa, but the SME grant, Honorable Speaker, is exactly that. It's teaching people how to fish. When we talk about empowerment, they keep referring it to freebies. I can't figure out how they can, if they can come up with better terms than that. And as I said, gold production is declining because it's an old mine. It's owned by a private company. I apologize, Honorable Speaker, I hear a lot of Bible reading from across the room, but I can't see anybody in white. I thought Honorable Voreqe was still around. I don't have a Bible with me, Honorable. I don't carry one. But I want to tell Honorable Ramuka that we have this wonderful app in this technology that we have. And I carry a Bible a little bit bigger than what he's got in his pocket. It's always, if he needs an app, I can give him one out of the 500 that's in this technology that we have. Honorable Speaker, over these 10 years, our economic expansion has been consistent. Year after year, after year after year, we have broken records, lowered unemployment, improved our debt to GDP ratio, and of course, improved access to roads, to clean water, to electricity and education. Through this decade, something else has been equally consistent year after year. That, of course, is the opposition's rejection of the national budget, crafted by this government that have been the blueprint of our economic growth. Mr. Speaker, you often hear quotes of great leaders. History remembers those who are proven right, but in the many millions of words that are spoken, all too often, we forget the words of those who were proven wrong. After all, history renders them meaningless. Can you imagine a rugby commentator projecting the outcomes of 9 games in a row and being consistently wrong every time? Would you still trust their opinion going into the 10th game? I don't think so, Honorable Speaker. Indeed, if we look back over the past 10 years of budget rejections by the opposition, Honorable Speaker, we can see that they have been proven wrong, and wrong, and wrong again. Every year, they dig in their heels, preaching of some doomsday scenario that never comes to be. And every year, the Fijian economy improves and grows. While the Honorable Leader of the Opposition seems to like the word collapse, Honorable Biman Prasad prefers crisis. Back in 2010, I remember, at the beginning of our current decade-long, before the current decade-long boom, he published a paper with a bleak outlook on the Fijian economy, titled Global Crisis, Domestic Crisis, or Crisis of Confidence. Which is the way forward for Fiji? Honorable Speaker, it's quite a title. Honorable Speaker, in this paper, he said that government should have been adapting expansionary fiscal policies in our budget, rather than efforts to consolidate. Nevertheless, his crisis never unfolded. Oh, I just jammed up my, no, sorry. Then 5 years later, halfway through our current boom, he tried a new angle. In his response to the 2015 budget, back when he was the Honorable Shadow Minister for Finance, not just another member among the opposition ranks, he criticized our expansionary approach, saying that the roads and bridges that we were building to better the country's infrastructure network were a bad investment. He voted against that budget, and again, the economy grew. I think it's clear, Mr. Speaker, that Honorable Prasad and his colleagues on the other side of Parliament are far from economic prophets. While they continue to shout that the sky is falling, Fiji First will continue to lead the country on a path of responsible financial management. We lay out the framework of our budgets on a future-facing basis, considering long-term trajectories. These budgets are guided by objectives and analytic thinking, not short-term gains or political posturing. Mr. Speaker, the 2019-2020 national budget is no different. It is the continuation of my government's long-term vision of our country's future, for our country's future, the same vision that has brought us into a decade of growth. We have outlined 5 pillars to this budget, and every dollar spent will be an investment in one of these pillars. Strengthening law and order, protecting our natural environment, empowering young Fijians, not freebies, empowering young Fijians, embracing technology and innovation, and finally, building certainty in an uncertain world. What more can you ask for? This budget was, as all of our budgets have been, crafted with careful considerations and consultations from Fijians from every corner of the country. Their input is what truly matters to this government, and their future is what we fight for with every single budgetary allocation under every single ministry. Mr. Speaker, I'm incredibly proud to personally oversee the sugar industry as the Minister for Sugar Industry, where I work at home to sustain the industry's effectiveness in a competitive global market and abroad to strengthen the reputation of Fijian sugar in the minds of buyers around the world. Just last week, I had the pleasure of opening the crushing season for the Voreqe mill, which, following extensive new upgrades, is looking to smash the figures it put up last year in crushing cane. But the reason why this crushing season is shaping up to be a success isn't only due to those new upgrades. It's owed to the entire range of support that my government has introduced and steadily funded to support the Fijians who rely on this industry's vitality. Mr. Speaker, anyone who follows the world sugar market would know that we're currently faced with forecasts of a global sugar surplus for 2019-2020. And this latest surge in production follows months of volatile pricing and ongoing uncertainty in the marketplace, as changing policies, subsidies, and weather patterns have cast an impenetrable fog over the future. Left vulnerable to this sweeping variability, Fijian cane farmers risk being squeezed out by the big boys in India, in Brazil, in China, and others who have deep enough pockets to wait out this period of instability. Fiji cannot influence trends in global market as large as sugar, nor can we predict where the price of sugar will head. But what we can do is protect our cane farmers from these ebbs and flows of the international markets and shield them from dramatic swings in the world prices. We can make ourselves a more competitive producer by modernizing the industry and making it more efficient. We can lessen our input cost to our farmers, widening their profit margin, establishing certainty, confidence, and firm sense of direction for our cane farmers, our lorry drivers, our mill workers, and all those who rely on health of our sugar industry. The 2019-2020 budget increases the allocation of the sugar industry to $70.4 million, up $8 million from last year. That allocation, Honourable Speaker, will continue to fund the sweeping range of support my government has introduced to assist our farmers as part of a strategic game plan for achieving long-term viability for this industry. Number one, the allocation will continue to subsidize a guaranteed cane price in Fiji of $85 per ton. Now, the forecasted market price of sugar is currently hovering around $56 per ton. So that's around $30 extra dollars per ton that government is covering, all for the benefit of our cane farmers. And that price is guaranteed through this year and next year. That's on top of subsidies, the cost of weedicide and fertilizer, which have grown more generous, rising to $25.59 per ton. And through a comprehensive mechanization push, Honorable Speaker, we are outfitting the industry with dozens of harvesters, tractors and six-wheeler trucks. And we'll soon be receiving a report from the Indian government outlining the blueprint for a massive upgrade of our national railway systems. Once that network is in place, we'll be able to transport much larger loads of cane on the rail system, reducing cane cartage costs even further. There will be a report coming out, Honorable Speaker, on the STM project that brought about Exim Bank funding received for $50.4 million, and the contract was signed in November 2005. The works contract issued in January 2006 and protracted delays in projection execution lasting until June 2010. But total STM project cost finally capitalized by FSC was $118 million in 2010-2011 financial year. There will be an investigation into this, Honorable Speaker, as we have spent a lot of money on something that was totally useless. The total losses to FSC came to $154 million for this STM project back in 2000 and 2006. Even in, when we talked about fiscal consolidation, Honorable Speaker, even in the period, our commitment to this industry has not stalled, in the sugar industry has not stalled or retracted. We have strengthened it, and we will continue to keep faith the Fijians who make up this industry, not by talking and certainly not by telling lies, but by giving our farmers the support they deserve. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also wish to acknowledge the allocation made to the Ministry of iTaukei Affairs. Over the next year, the ministry will do more or less. We will look toward our strategic objectives, namely enhancing leadership training, documenting our culture and traditions, and building resilience in the midst of an increasingly globalized world. Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend the ministry for expanding upon the role that it was mandated within the iTaukei Affairs Act of 1944, evolving the ministry to adapt to an evolving economy and changing society. Since 2010, the ministry has branched out from cultural preservation alone to now look at the broader socio-economic issues that affect our iTaukei communities, including child protection, sustainable environment, sustainable farming, and conservation, to name just a few. As our traditional leaders work to address these modern issues, they have a steadfast ally in my government. Mr. Speaker, in the 2019-2020 financial year, the Department of Immigration under my purview will undertake sweeping new initiatives to strengthen border control services. These include the production of e-passports for easier border entry, the implementation of new e-gates at the Nandi International Airport, closer integration with Interpol, building our IT and intelligence capacity, and engaging in a comprehensive review of all current laws, regulations, and process for all immigration services. Specifically, we'll be setting extremely high standards for the attainment of Fijian citizenship, opening up the right to work for spouses of Fijians, and creating new categories for permanent residents. We will make changes to the issuance of work permits and collecting new fees from foreign applicants that will then directly fund upskilling our local Fijians. In bringing about these changes, we will build a business-friendly environment while recognizing the need to bring in the skill sets required in a modern, thriving, and sophisticated economy. Mr. Speaker, my time is winding down, but I want to be abundantly clear. The 2019-2020 national budget is strong. This budget is responsible. As I've said, it will streamline our businesses and build confidence. not eroded, despite the opposition set's best effort. And it will care for our people in a way that continues our booming decade of economic prosperity. In his budget response, the Honorable Attorney General, Minister for Economy, of course, coined this decade the Bainimarama boom. And while the new title may be catchy and I think a bit cheesy, the success cannot be attributed to me alone. And in fact, the new phrase represents something very familiar. Over the past decade, we have known when to expand and when to contract. We have known when to strategically invest and when to do it. Our economy has soared through the best of times and endured through the worst of times. We've faced down international headwinds and even the global financial crisis head on. And we still came out on top. We have been through the strongest cyclone ever to make landfall in the southern hemisphere, ravaging our economy and wiping out a third of our GDP. And we still came out on top. As we enter a new age of uncertainty abroad, today is no different. And while I've been at the top as we charted this decade of growth, our boom is attributed to a much greater effort. Indeed, it has truly been a team success, a product of type of cohesion that a disorganized opposition can only dream of. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, this booming decade has been carried on the shoulders of the hard-working Fijian people. Economies are not built by politicians. They are built by the people. From the Minister of Economy and his team, who work so tirelessly every year to put these budgets together, to every Fijian shopkeeper, hotel worker, engineer, farmer, the IT professional, the teacher, the fisherman, the banker, the taxi driver, the business person, the government worker, the police officer, the artist, the nurse, the factory worker, electrical lineman, the clerk and civil servant. I thank you as your Prime Minister for bringing Fiji to the position of strength where we sit today. Together we will continue to build on this progress, and together we will move our nation forward. With that, Mr. Speaker, the 2019-2020 national budget earns my full and resounding endorsement. Thank you.